Mrs. Ramsey, I understand you recall events that occurred on September 11th in 2001. What were you doing the moment the first tower or Pentagon was struck?
I was working for the Centers for Disease Control in the Bioterrorism Preparedness and Emergency Response Program, and I was the administrative officer.
I was at work and an email came through announcing that a possible terroristic attack had happened.
How do you know the attacks had occurred?
The first time the email came through, it was a possibility that they had been terroristic attacks. The next thing that happened was the first tower was hit with the plane. Then it elevated our alert system.
I had the television on, and it said a plane had hit one of the Twin Towers. Being aware that that was a very, very, very unusual event immediately puts in your mind, is this something else?
How did your job react to the attacks?
The first reaction that CDC had was response. CDC has reacted, A, in our response, and B, in really beefing up our security to make our facility a very safe place for the employees.
Immediately upon hearing that the towers had been hit, we went into a 24-hour response. We were the only people to have airplanes in the air that afternoon. We had the responsibility of getting supplies up there. Our main objective that day was to determine whether or not there were any chemicals involved with the planes that might affect the people up there.
Immediately, CDC activated their emergency plans and sent someone to to New York, one of the only planes in the air. And we started seeing how many hospital beds would be needed. One of my first just horrible memories is I can remember them saying, "We don't need many hospital beds. We need body bags."
Who do you know that had a direct view of what happened on September 11th?
But the person I know who was most directly impacted was one of my childhood friends. And he was in the building across from the World Trade Center tower. The thing that impacted him the most was seeing human beings jump from the towers. And he said it was just like raining people. And he said it was the most horrific thing to think. What was going through their mind? Either collapse with the building, stay in here and choke on the smoke, or jump to my death and let it be my choice. And it gave him nightmares for months.
How did he cope with the nightmares after?
And about 5 months into it, he couldn't take it. He flew home to be with his family, and his family recognized that he had post-traumatic stress disorder. And he went to a psychological facility, and he was in there for about 2 months.
What was your reaction after the attack of the Twin Towers?
Sheer anger. There were images on the news of people in different countries celebrating the demise of America. Whatever it is that caused them to celebrate, I will never be able to grasp that.
How do you think the U.S. can better prepare our country for any further attacks?
I think it's important for America to recognize the differences in countries and how it's important to build collaborative relationships with those countries and to respect our differences, but yet bridge some gaps.
The government themselves obviously put in a lot of money so that the states themselves could get emergency response teams up and going.
Do you feel like another attack could penetrate the security of the nation?
I think America and other countries are always at risk of attacks. I hope we never ever experience something of this magnitude ever again.
The Defense Department and the military have gotten more aware, and I think just making people themselves more aware. I mean, I think we ourselves are more aware that you need to be cautious in of all of your surroundings.
Did you feel safe?
I felt safe in that they were doing everything they could. There was just many Army Humvees and other armored cars, but by then we assumed that the president had gotten back to Washington, but you had this, just like everyone in the world, had in the back of the mind, what can happen next?
Did you ever feel like something like this could happen?
On September 8th, my family and I we were driving through Hamilton, Mississippi, and then all of a sudden, I just asked my husband, what is the big buildings in New York called? You know, the really world famous ones. I feel like something monumental is going to happen to the World Trade Center towers. I feel like it's going to be so big and so horrible that it's going to impact the entire world. And then September 11th happened, and I went into work and started seeing the email messages that something bad had happened in New York. It didn't dawn on me at the time that I had just thought 3 days before that something like this was going to happen. And then Bill came home, my husband, and when he opened the front door and saw me, the first thing he said was, "You weren't off." And when it sunk in, I went into shock, like a burn victim goes into shock. And I had to be covered up in blankets. I couldn't stop shaking. I never cried. I never really shed a tear about 9/11 and all of the lives that were lost. But then if you fast forward to this year, we went to New York, and I went to the World Trade Center Tower Memorial, and I saw all the names of all the victims in marble and the beautiful fountains, and I finally lost.
Thank you very much.